I just laugh. I always just say to people, writing this book completely kicked my butt. So it did. It was very hard, actually. And here's why. This book was, I mean, I had somebody help me, a professional writer, help me work on, like, we worked on it for a while, probably 7 months, on just the proposal. And we were torn between, do we lead with, hey, earlier puberty, this is happening and everybody needs to know about it? Or option B was, do we lead with, hey, there's this stage called middle childhood that nobody's talking about. It's literally in psychology referred to as the forgotten years, right? Freud called these latency years. And so, do we lead with that? Because nobody talks about it. Like, so we talk about early childhood, 0 to 5, and we talk about adolescence or teenagers, 13 to 18. But literally, there was not one book on the market, nothing about this middle childhood. So we were really, really torn, go back and forth, back and forth. So we wrote the proposal in a way that, like, just sort of exemplified both pretty strongly. And, um, and then we modeled it after my format of Mommy Burnout. So we modeled it after, I'll use a true client story. We'll do a whole, like, sounds familiar. So what, that's one aspect that we took was, how do we want each chapter to be consistent? And do we want to have a format? And that we worked on for a while, but it was like, yes, I'm going to start off with a bit of a story. I guess people really like stories, right? So start off with a story, then go to, like, hey, does, like, a checklist. Does this sound familiar? Like, this chapter would be good for you if this is what's happening in your life. And then we'd have a checklist. And then something new about this book is, I felt like every time I was talking with my writer and we were, like, going back and forth on an idea, every time I would say something like, it's like a paradigm shift. It's like we think it should be this way, but really it's this way. And so then we added that piece in around paradigms. So there's, like, a call out box and it will say, like, sort of like the current way of thinking paradigm, and we'd write it, and then, like, the new paradigm. And so that was another element. And then I wanted to do, this was important to me. I wanted to have a lot of scripts. I wanted it to be, like, the most handy, not just the thick, even though they do fine. I know people do like reading books that just are lots of text. This one is broken out, and it's almost my strongest piece of feedback in the whopping 2 weeks that it's been out, which is, I love the way this book is structured. So it's very, like, user friendly. Like, you could literally just flip to a section and there's going to be like a hard topic, and then there's going to be a script. And those, the way I created those was literally going back and forth with my writer, and I'd be like, "Okay, now you play the child, and I'm gonna say back to you what I would say." Like, I tried to make it authentic because it's hard when I talk versus when I write. When I write could be much more formal, but when I talk, so then we would capture me and we would record me talking. And then I ended it with "in a nutshell." Oh, no, that is the way it ended, "in a nutshell." But right before "in a nutshell," I have this other component to every chapter that says looking ahead. And the reason why I did that was, when we were thinking about, like, how did we want to position this in the market, I wanted to position it as, this is your roadmap to a healthier teenage years with your kid. I promise we don't pay attention to 6 to 12. So we all kick back a little bit, right? And the kids go to school and they're not home. And then what's happening in those 6 years is actually what is setting your kid up for what's going to happen to them in their teenage years. So I really wanted to emphasize that because I work with so much with teenagers and I love them. I wanted every parent to know that this book does apply to your 6 to 12-year-old, but it literally is like your, I think it's like your magic, like, little secret on how you're going to help set your kid up to be more mentally healthy or more resilient, or be a good communicator and just have a healthier, stronger relationship with them, because during 6 to 12, you've put in a lot of work to create the foundation for that. So that's how it really came to be. So I feel like I still kind of help parents of teenagers because it leads you there, but 6 to 12, I'm giving it life. I'm giving it the recognition it literally deserves, especially in today's modern world. It really is created for the parent. I do think a kid would probably be pretty bored with it, but this is really funny. So I was being interviewed last week in Santa Monica, and the person interviewing me has 5 kids. She has 5 boys under 12. And so she's telling this story, as we're doing our interview thing, and she's like, "Okay, so I'm not kidding you. For the last couple of weeks, I've been walking around with this book." And I'm like, walking around at my house. And she's like, and my oldest son, I think her 12-year-old, he might be 13, 12 or 13-year-old says, like, "What are you doing with that book? Why are you carrying it around all the time, mom?" And she's like, "Because it's teaching me how to be a parent." And he's like, "What are you talking about? You already know how to be a parent." And she's like, "No, no, no. Like, there's things in here." And so, anyway, she tells the story about how she has, I think, these 3-year-olds, and they were being wild at bedtime. And now she's tired and whatever. And so she's like, I pick up the book, and I'm like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do again? Oh, yeah. Okay." And she's like, "Okay, guys." And so I mean, she really has followed everything in this book, but I talk about these cards are called yoga pretzels, and she bought them. And so she picks up these cards and she's like, "Okay, boys, pick a card." And basically they're mindfulness and yoga cards. And so she's like, "Pick a card and we're going to do it." They picked a card. She goes, and then they did it. And then they were like, "Okay, good night. I'm going to bed." And so she was like, "Oh my gosh, I would have been screaming, yelling, threatening. Like it would have been like crazy." And she's like, "And it actually works." She's like, "So I don't care. I'm walking around with it." So I don't think it's meant, or would it be interesting for a kid, but I do think that parents, especially because they're tough topics, some of them, they can say, "Hey, this can be a little uncomfortable for me too," or "Guess what? I don't know everything." Like, I don't know anybody who knows everything about like puberty and all these things. I mean, there's things that I learned when I was writing it too. But I have this book and it has a lot of things in here that are really relevant to where we're at. And I do think that just having a book is a way of basically, I think it's really positive for kids. Yes, they might laugh a little, especially teenagers, like, "Oh, my mom and her parenting books." And they make jokes, but deep down, they know they're trying. They're trying. They're putting in the effort. They care enough to take time out of their day to like read about the thing you're being bullied. Well, they don't know what to say or do. So boom, there's a section on bullying. Like I think kids, regardless of how, if they act like they barely notice or if they make fun of you when they're older, get the message though, like you're modeling for them. I don't have all the answers, which is great modeling, but I'm curious and I'm interested and I love you enough to put in that time. And I think that's a really powerful message. The first one is I wound up writing 2 chapters on dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is a term that it still shocks me, but is a term that everyday people use now. Right? And because we're seeing so many kids who look older, they're in bigger bodies, but the truth is that emotionally they're still really young. They don't know the skills how to deal with stress and conflict and losing and failure. And so they're melting down. So I wrote 2 chapters on it. And the first one was for parents and the second one was for kids. I'd say one takeaway is that I'm really both shocked, surprised, and glad that there's so many people who are walking around with specific things that happened to them, their own 6 to 12, that are now parents. They haven't worked on that stuff. They get easily dysregulated themselves, or they yell, they scream, they might still hit their kids, whatever it is that they do. And so I've been pleased to see the early feedback of saying like, this is really helpful for me as a parent to realize like I need my own tools. How am I going to teach my kid to stay calm? I'm screaming calm down and I'm not calm. So I've been really, I think one takeaway is that you kind of can't do this work 6 to 12 and definitely 12 to 18. It's really hard to do your job the way you probably dream of doing it without really knowing how to read your own body, how to calm your own breath, how to take a space, how to do those things literally for yourself and also as modeling. So I'd say that's like was a number one takeaway is this starts with like your own regulation for parents. And so that's been really great. I think the second takeaway is how much people will say, "I no one ever talked to me about any of this stuff. I have no idea how to talk to my kids about this stuff because I wasn't talked to." And I see though now how different things could have been for me if somebody would have actually like talked to me about what's going on. And it's not just the puberty and the physical stuff that's there, but also why doesn't my I'm 11, why doesn't my best friend wanna play with me anymore? Why did you stop? Why am I being left out? What do I do when you know, people are constantly telling me that I'm so tall and I look like I should play basketball. And they ask me, "Are you a basketball player? Are you this?" And the kid's like, "No, I don't like basketball. I don't even play it." So there's that piece, that second piece, just around, I think, like that awareness around what goes on. And if you weren't talked to about it, then, like how hard it is to talk to someone about it. So that's been really great. And then the third one, and this is not in order because this is probably the most frequently talked about topic, are screens and how much screens impact. This is not a teenage issue. Screen time, social media, this is not. It is a teen issue, but it starts 6 to 12. I mean, it's being really specific, it starts 8 to 12. So I have all these stats in there around how many kids, like 50% of kids by the age of 10 already have a smartphone. 75% of kids by the age of 12 have a smartphone. 60 something, 6 out of 10 kids have social media by the time that they're 12. I mean, there's like stat after stat. Like, even though the word is out on the street that social media and screens and all of this screen time is robbing kids of their childhoods, parents are still giving in to the pressure. This is what you do, or we have a high tech society, or kids have to be on screens to learn anyway. And I think parents, of course, they don't really want this for their kids. I think they just feel pressured and they don't understand, like, what could this look like in a different reality? And so I'd say that's my third biggest takeaway is if you have a kid who's 6 to 12, you still have an opportunity. You're still the most influential person in their life. Set the rules, create a contract. Who cares? Somebody said to me after a talk, they said, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm doing it all wrong. I have an 8-year-old and they have their own iPad." And yeah, they watch YouTube on it. Cause I tell people YouTube is the first social media app your kid will likely encounter. People don't think of YouTube as a social media app. I'm like, it is though. And so, 8 to 12, you are so in charge of things. Who cares if you did something wrong or you want to do something differently? Do it. Tell them why, explain to them. I know better. When we know better, we do better. I think that's an important message. And so I think the screens is a really big one. I'm very proud of that chapter. That chapter kicked my butt because I have so much overflow of information. I could write 2 chapters on it easily. But what I put in there is very unique. There's not a lot that's out there that's dedicated to the younger kids for parents. How do you set limits? What do these things even mean? How do you do parental controls on video games? So I cover video games, social media, and screen time in general. Off to my next age range. It's funny how much though this is getting me like really excited. Like I know I need to like pull myself in and slow down because this is going to be, I hope, right, a couple of years of talking about this so much that we don't need to talk about it as much anymore. But I have my next age range, and it is an age range. It's not a topic. It's just to me, I hope it's a modeling just like this book, and it's going to be 18 to like 28-year olds. The young adults are really, really doing poorly with their mental health, loneliness, are very lonely. They're very disconnected. College kids have a lot of mental health issues. So I'm going to skip over adolescence, even though I love those kids and I work with them. I think there's enough out there. And I really want to talk about the next stage after adolescence, which is young adulthood.